Welcome! You are listening to the CRM Success Show, where you will hear from CRM executives who have overseen some of the most interesting and complex CRM implementations. Your hosts, David Masri and Kira Whitey, will be bringing you real stories, real insight. Follow along on social media for updates on new episode releases, exclusive content, and much more. Enjoy the show, and thanks for listening.
Welcome to the CRM Success Show, where we deep dive into CRM success and failure, delivering real stories with real impact. I'm Dave Masri.
And I'm Kira Whitey.
And today we're talking with Christen Sisler, who will be telling us about her time at Sequoia.
Welcome to the show, Christen. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So just to start off with, could you give our listeners an overview of your role, company, and high level how Salesforce is used and the landscape of the org in terms of products and users and so on?
Yeah, so I'm the Senior Director of Salesforce at Sequoia. We're a strategic compensation and benefit partner. We help you get the most out of your total people investment. We specialize in VC-backed companies. Sequoia is very big on, relationships, and we're a relationship-driven company. And so I think one of the really unique things about it is you can start out with us as a small 20-person startup, and we will grow with you all the way up to, an enterprise level over 500 employees, and help you do all of that. So I think that's really interesting, which is we're not trying to just focus on how do we get this new business, but how do we maintain that relationship, over 20 years as you grow your company.
Fantastic.
The landscape of the org, we've got about 1,000 users. We use Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, CRM Analytics, and then we do have Experience Cloud as well for a couple of features in our Sequoia People platform.
Perfect. And in terms of the org, anything in the pipeline that you're looking to invest in or move in to grow out the org further?
We'll continue to expand, Einstein, start to push more of the AI functionality. We just want to make sure that it's really thoughtful, and make sure that it's something that's going to get adopted and used. As you roll out more and more things, there's always a tax to it. So you can't just roll it out and then it's not a project base where, hey, it's done, now what's the next thing? It's now there's a tax on maintaining that, adding new functionality to it, supporting it if something goes wrong. And so just making sure that whatever we are rolling out in those spaces are things that are going to actually add value to our users.
Which teams for Sequoia are heavily interacting with Salesforce?
Our sales and service. So we use both Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, and it's what our sales and service teams use to deliver.
Anything on the marketing side?
We use Marketo. So there is some on the marketing side. We have Marketo integrated. We use some prospecting. So we don't use Marketing Cloud right now or Pardot. But yes, there's a little bit of marketing as well.
Awesome. So just give us a bit more about what Sequoia does. It's not Sequoia Capital, right? Because I know it's a common confusion. Right. So we know that you help companies grow in terms of their people resources. Just tell our listeners a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, so we've got a great team of our client services, so we can help you. We have a PEO side of the business for smaller startups, and then we really move into more of that advisory. So we've got not only benefits, but we've got compensation, help you with your merit planning. We can do 401k, risk management. We offer compliance guidelines. So we really try to really do that total people investment. And we want to be tech enabled. So we don't want to just do that, but we want to do it in a really smart way. And that's where our Sequoia People platform comes into play. And so we not only have a portion for, the CFO to be able to look at compensation, but we also offer the Sequoia People platform and different modules to the client's employees and their dependents. And so it's kind of funny, but my husband loves the app. So we've got a Sequoia app, and he does most of taking our kids to the doctor for their appointment stuff. And so he just loves, like, he's got a digital insurance card. So anytime he goes there and I say, do you have an insurance card? He's like, oh yeah, it's right on my phone. I don't have to be looking for it. It shows you like how close you are to the deductible, what you have for insurance. And so he loves it. Every time we go somewhere, he's always showing people, oh, I love this app from her company. So it's great to see that, we use it obviously internally. We always try to be the first, customer of anything that we're rolling out. We are just really focused on making sure we have good client experience.
Awesome. So you provide tools and training, I guess, and advisory, but not people.
But not people.
You wouldn't like place an HR individual.
We do have HR business partners, yes, for part of our PEO.
Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. So tell us a bit about your journey with Sequoia. How long you've been there, when you started, what you walked into, what was your kind of mandate when you started, what problems you were facing, all of that kind of stuff. Tell us the start of the trend.
Yeah, so I've been at Sequoia a little over 2 years, so about 2.5 years. We have our Salesforce environment is pretty old. It's been around for 15 years or more at Sequoia. And so obviously that comes with its unique set of challenges, pros and cons. And so one of the challenges when I first came in, my mandate was just like, help make sure things are getting delivered. And so then, it was really about identifying areas that we could grow in, mature in, to not only help that, but then go further than can we just get these things delivered. And so one of the areas was really looking at how we were structuring our processes, how we were structuring our team, and just being more engineering led versus product led. And so that's something that I'm really passionate about is, to me, Salesforce and the work that you do on it is very similar to a product. And so I really like to structure teams and the way we do things to be more product led. So, structuring the team that way instead of, hey, we've got a Salesforce admin, we're going to have, product managers. And a lot of times, admins are really playing a product manager role if you think about it. And so having proper, hey, we're going to have product managers, we're going to have a true roadmap. We are not just going to take tickets out of a queue and do whatever's on that ticket. It really has to be, how does this fit into our roadmap? How does it fit into our strategy? How is this going to scale for us? So having, kind of architecture as one arm of our team, having engineering as another, QA, product management, and then not just having support, but we actually call it platform operations. So they're not responsible just for, helping manage a new user, getting them permissions, but they're responsible for the overall health of our production environment.
Okay, so it sounds like before you'd get a business request, I guess they posted Jira ticket or something, and someone would just work off a queue. And you want it to be, let's say, more goal focused.
Yeah, so there was kind of two pieces to it. There was, hey, these are the large projects we want to do this year. And then here's a bunch of requests coming in from the business. But the problem was, you could have two business people submitting a request that actually cancel each other out, right? I want this added or I want this removed, and they could cancel each other out. And so really making sure that it wasn't, well, this is just a really simple thing to do, let's go ahead and do it, but putting some thought behind it. While at the same time, not saying we can't get to you for a year or you're not going to be able to have things pushed out quickly. So that was really a balancing act, and we accomplished it a couple ways. One is through separating our support tickets as far as this is a problem and enhancement requests. And then we set up a Salesforce council. So it has all of our lines of service. They can come. It has the executives from those departments, and we talk about the priorities. We look at, hey, we've got a lot of unplanned work that's being requested that we need to balance against a roadmap. Does it make sense to take on some of this and remove some of the things from the roadmap in order to compensate for this? We do obviously save some capacity for this unplanned work or this business as usual work, right? We can't say we're not adding any fields because it's not on the roadmap and you didn't know this when we planned the roadmap, so therefore we can't add this new field. So we do try to do that as a balancing act, but I think all of that kind of combined has helped.
Awesome. So the initial goals, right? Were those more like fix broken things that the user might not care about, let's say tech debt, or is that more like corporate initiative? We want to blow out a marketing campaign. Yeah. So tell us a bit about more of the initial corporate goals that you wanted to, and how much of that was really forward looking as opposed to, cleaning up this 15 years of debt that you were talking about. Like, how bad was that? The 15 years? Was it just, because there can be a lot of different things.
Yeah, there was a lot of different things. There's things that weren't being used anymore. We have a lot of custom code. Making sure that we have proper code coverage is really important. So when I first started, I inherited kind of the list of projects for the year. I was coming in after the start of the plan year. And so that first year was really focused on how do we make the team really efficient? How do we build in some best practices? And then how do we deliver this? Because it's already been promised that we would deliver this. So I inherited that. And then the second year was really about, okay, now that we're planning this out, how do we get to a place where now we're developing a roadmap that really aligns with what the business goals are. So for this year, we're looking at, how do we drive more value out of what we already have? How do we make sure that we have the user adoption that we need on functionality? And if it's not there, do we need to sunset it? Is it not being used anymore? Because of what I talked about with that tax, and we don't want to support it if nobody's really using it.
Almost a use or lose it type mentality, right?
Yes, definitely. But that, also comes with a lot of challenges because it's 15 years ago or even 10 years ago, you may have had to code something or bring in a third party because it just didn't exist out of the box. And now it does exist out of the box. And so it'd be great to just leverage that, but there's work involved to move it over. And you don't always, the end user is not going to see the benefit of that because at the end of the day, it could look exactly the same to them. But you've moved it to out of the box versus being code. And so, we were talking earlier about analogy of with technical debt, renovating a house. Nobody wants to spend the money on fixing a foundation. It's really important, but I want pretty cabinets in my kitchen and I want nice appliances and I want the countertops, things I can see and I'm going to be using. I don't want to spend all of my money on a renovation, just fixing a foundation. That seems boring, or, having to redo all the electrical or something I'm not going to see. And so it's really a balancing act of, we know we have to fix technical debt to keep the system running smoothly, to set us up for success in the future, to get the most value out of what Salesforce is pushing out, right? Salesforce does a lot of releases. They do 3 releases a year, which is a good amount. And they, if you're not keeping up with that, you can't always take advantage of what they're releasing because they're building on top of what, their product. And so if you've custom built something, you may not be able to take advantage of that unless you move it over to more out of the box functionality. And so really balancing that with continuing to deliver the things that the user wants is, going to be the challenge with technical debt.
Yeah. So selling the need to clean up technical debt is always a challenge. Any tips or tips for doing that?
If you can tie it to security, that's always a pretty good one, right?
Security says we have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. No, if you can tie to that helps. I would say, education is a big one. Just educating leaders. You have to build up the trust first, right? You can't come in day one and be like, oh, we've got to fix all this technical debt. And so you have to build up the trust to a point where when you are saying, like, this is something that has to be done, leadership understands, oh, there must be a good reason for that. And you're able to explain that and really show where the value is going to come from. I would say that the other piece is saving some capacity from your team. So making sure that you can work on it and you can kind of do both at the same time. And then tying it to different releases. So, hey, let's take a good example of we're moving, they're deprecating process builder, everything needs to move to flows. Okay, we've got a request that's going to be a lot of rework on a current process builder. You're gonna, as part of this, we're actually gonna change it to a flow. So really baking in when you are touching pieces that are legacy or that you need to fix them a little bit, just baking that into the level of effort so you can do it the right way.
In terms of the three key areas that I take away from the plan that you talked about when you started the role almost 2.5 years ago: technical debt, heavy custom code, and also a big realignment of teams, their roles, the structure of those roles. Taking those three things, and we can break them down individually. How did your new ideas, ways of working, how did the team react and the business react to those kind of changes that you were recommending and putting into the org?
Yes, I say it varies. The team, for the most part, they were excited because I've got such a great team. They want to do, best practices. They want to, clean up the technical debt, make sure everything's running really smoothly. And so that was actually more of a balancing act of, hey, we can't just work on technical debt. We've got to work on these other things, but we will save capacity, we'll save room for that. So I've got a team that, they really want to do the right things. They're very excited about, putting in place best practices. We're also at the size where we can try processes out and try different things out. And we don't have to do a ton of change management within our own team. We're only about 25 people, which for some people, they might think that's a lot. But previous to this, I ran a team of almost 300. And so there you have to think through things more carefully and have a really well thought out process before you push it out, because now you're trying to roll it back from 300 people, where here, about 25 people. So I always tell them, let's try it. If it doesn't work, we just won't do it anymore. So very open to trying new processes and trying to get things continually better. I think Sequoia overall is very much like that, where it is, let's continue to improve, let's continue to make things better and try, new things. So that culture is already there. And then for the business side, it wasn't, here's my plan, and I'm going to do this. It was more slowly, again, educating so that it didn't seem like such a drastic change. It was like, hey, I'm going to make this change. I think the interesting thing is that when I first joined, I started putting all of my plans into a deck, and I shared that with the CEO. It has taken, I didn't share that with the whole team right away because I think it would have been a bit of a shock. Wait, you want to do what? You want to get to where? And so it has taken a couple of years to take that initial vision of what I saw and get us to where we're at. But it hasn't altered very much. It was, this is really what I see for the team. This is where I want to get to. But then just, again, making that incremental progress. And then getting that confidence that, hey, we can execute, this is going to make things better. That gets you to a place where, again, you're trusted to make more of those decisions. People have more faith in you as you're trying to do these things. And then they start to come up with their own ideas. And so I think that, having a plan, but being able to actually show that you can execute on it is really important. I think a lot of times people have great ideas, but they oversell it and then they can't deliver it. In consulting, I come also from a consulting background. It's always what under promise and over deliver. And so I think that you do have to be careful that you're not overselling what you want to accomplish and what you can do. Because if you can't deliver on that, then you lose a lot of trust with your team, with your leaders, and with the business.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the team were surprisingly very receptive to change. I think that's always a leader's dream, right? If you've got a team that are open to improving and without too much convincing, right? They want to do it on their own accord. You mentioned best practices and being, doing Salesforce the right way. But what was unexpected? And except from that, maybe the team being so on board, but I'm not surprised at that by listening to you already and your ways of working and ideas. But what was unexpected? What was an unexpected kind of, I didn't anticipate that kind of moment?
Yeah, just to tack on that question, what about your users change management? That's a much larger user base, 1,000 as opposed to your team of 25. How did that compare and contrast?
Okay, so first, the unexpected. Let's see. The unexpected, I would say, is our team of engineering is they understand the business processes very well. And I think that comes from a lot of times they were also the ones that before we had proper product managers in place, they were having to get the requirements and just try and build. So that was unexpected. I hadn't worked with an engineering team that seemed to understand the business more than I did when I first came here. They still understand probably the business more than I do. And so that it was unexpected in a good way. And it's great to actually be able to talk through. And to this day, I will maybe say like, oh, we should do this. And they're like, okay, but what about? And then I know as soon as they say, but what about, they're going to very politely point out exactly where I didn't understand a business complexity that I really needed to in order to make the feature be the way it needs to be. So I think that was unexpected in a really great way. And one of the things I always tell my teams when we structure it, where we have product managers and architects and engineering, is I want there to be like healthy tension. So I want the product managers pushing back on engineering to say, why didn't you just use this out of the box feature? And I want engineering to push back and say, hey, product manager, you're not thinking about, how we actually need to build this. You promised this in a week. Like, to do this properly, we need 3-4 weeks. And then architecture should always be pushing back on like, how is this going to scale? And product managers are, how do we deliver, quickly? How do we make sure that it's what the end user wants? And so I want that healthy tension and that healthy balance, because I really think that's how you get the best product. As far as the user management goes, we're still working on that, right? And I think there's a couple things. One is I view the users as my clients. I think that comes again from having a consulting background, but to me, they're my clients. And so ultimately, I am trying to make them happy. I am trying to give them what they need to be successful in their role. Again, when you think about, is it a profit driver, a cost center? I'm thinking about it as a cost center from that perspective of, they're out there selling, they're out there working with the clients, that brings in that revenue. And so how do I make sure that they're successful at their job, that we're getting what we need to be doing? And then managing that, I could easily, from what the business wants, have a team 3-4 times the size that I have today and keep them all busy. And so it's really managing all of those priorities and working with the user. So I think there's a couple ways that we do that. One is building relationships at the that leadership level over each team, making sure that I really understand what they're looking for. I'm educating them on, I know it's just this field, but it actually requires a whole deployment process to do this. And then working on those conflicting priorities. So identifying the people who can help you understand in the business. I just got 6 people that told me this was like the most urgent thing ever. It's probably urgent to them, but I don't understand across Sequoia right now how urgent it is. And so being able to go to that person and say, all right, out of these 6 things, like what is actually the real impact here? Can you help me understand that? And so building those relationships, and again, that's what Sequoia is all about, is going to be your number one, success factor. Same thing with running a team. Like, you're not going to be successful if you don't have a good team. So it's really important that you have a strong team that works well together, that gets along, and that really wants the same things, or has the same values of, we really want, that quality of over scope, essentially, which is actually one of our Sequoia values, which I love, is quality over scope. I think that's how they got me signed up with them, because when they did that in an interview, I was like, wait, one of your values is quality over scope. Sign me up. And so making sure they have the same values as you. We want to do a really good job. We want to, enjoy what we're doing, be constantly learning. I have a team that just wants to learn constantly. And so I think that is, at the end of the day, it's about people. You aren't going to be successful if you don't have those relationships and you aren't working together. Some of the other things that we rolled out is, for our enhancement process, we pushed it up to director level. So only directors and above can submit enhancement requests. And that just makes sure that we ensure they're understanding how this change is going to work in their overall business process. And then, like I said, we set up that Salesforce council to even raise it another level to say, do we all understand like what we're asking for? Do we agree on the priorities? And people can raise their hand to say, wait, you're asking for this enhancement request. Do you understand that this actually impacts me too? And so that's a really good way to move quickly and understand impact, is if you bring kind of everyone together and talk about it.
In terms of the council, so the audience of the council, there was 2 things there that I heard you mention. One of my questions were, when you're deciding what a priority is, how do you come to the conclusion of, this is a high priority, this is a low priority, this is mid? Do you have a voting system? But then you referred back to the council, and you also mentioned that only directors can kind of bring those enhancement ideas forward to the table. Now, I know those directors are going to listen to their team, but there's maybe a bit of bias there, right? What's important to one team, the director of that team might not think so, right? But the user could really be struggling, but it might be something trivial. So I'm curious, at the council, what members make up of the council? Is it more users, or is it still directors, or?
It's a combination. So it's usually, we've got every line of service. The leader of that line of service is on it. We've got our director of sales operations on it, so kind of representing all of sales there. Our service team is much larger than our sales, and so that's why we've got kind of one representation from the sales and then multiple from the lines of service. And then, another great thing about Sequoia, just everybody pitches in where they need to. We actually have our chief client officer joins that. So she sits over all of service, which helps when we don't have to have a voting, right? We kind of understand the impact. And then our Sequoia One CEO is also, she just joined recently, and she's going to be on it too. So that really helps, because, they don't want to look through 1,000 requests, right, that come in. But being in that and hearing from their leaders what's important from the technology, they're able to provide guidance too on the impact. So they could say, this is really valuable, but it's, in the middle of what we call our growth season. So we're not going to do it right now because we don't want to disrupt the business flow. Let's do it kind of in our off season for this business unit. Or I understand, but I'm aware of like the, business priorities overall, and this just doesn't align with exactly what I need right now. And so having that as well helps, because now everybody's aligned, everybody's on the same page. It's not, well, there was a vote of 4-3, and that's how I lost, and I've got to go, behind the scenes and champion for votes or anything like that. It really is a collaborative environment, with everybody understanding, all right, I get why we didn't prioritize my item that I was asking for. And it's still a work in progress. So it's not perfect by any means. I'm sure there's still users who are frustrated. But it is really has gotten us to a place where it is manageable for our team, because before we put some of these processes into place, users didn't know when stuff was going to get delivered. We had a backlog of hundreds of enhancement requests. My team was overwhelmed on, what do we need to work on? How do we need to do this? Is this still relevant? I'm looking at this ticket. Well, this was from 6 months ago. Is this still relevant? Now I got to go figure this out. Is this even the right person who owns a business process that I can talk to? So it has brought a lot of kind of clarity, efficiency for my team. And now, really getting it to a place where it is beneficial for the users is the next step. So I would say we still have work to do, because I don't want to, one of the users is listening to this, they may say, oh, it's still not where I need it to be. So for my team, it's working really well. And we're just now going to focus on how do we make it work really well for the business too.
So in terms of negotiating with the council, right, what we're going to accomplish this year, this quarter, I assume it's not at the week level.
Well, it is and it's not. So yeah. So we don't do the council every week. We do it monthly. And we did just take like a little hiatus for a few months where we didn't run it. We set a yearly roadmap, and that is at the executive level. So that is, what are the big things that we want to do? We've got a sales roadmap. We've got a service roadmap. We have a roadmap around data and security. So basically our cross-functional partners, what do you need to do to be successful on whatever is on your roadmap? Like, how do we have to support you? So we make sure that that's baked into there. And then we've got kind of our client experience roadmap. And we work with each of the executives on that to really align with the Sequoia's goals for the year. And then we take that unplanned capacity that we're saving, and that's really what the council is focused on, is what do they need for this upcoming month or quarter. We do weekly releases. So we have gotten to a place where every Thursday, this week it was Wednesday because of Diwali, but every Thursday we do a release. Now, sometimes it's a major release and sometimes it's just a minor release, but we try to do that because what that helps with too is, if a user wants something really quickly, I don't have to tell them they have to wait a month or 2 months. I can say, great, it's, this is something simple. Oh, it's a high priority. I don't have to do a crazy hot fix for this. I can put it into the next release. Can you just wait 3 days? Like, it's simple enough that we can get it into. It doesn't require, a robust UAT. I'm going to need you to do, a quick QA for me, but we can fit into the next release, which is in 3 days. And so that has also helped with some of the noise, is that we do that weekly release.
I've got 2 questions and then we'll move on to the next section. There seems to be a lot of information, right? And I could be naive, but to me, there's a lot, like, you've got to keep on track with these requests, the council, the director meetings, the ongoing enhancements, that you still got the tickets, the day-to-day. How do you track all this in terms of like those requests that come in? Could you give us a little bit of context? Like, what are you using behind the scenes to make sure that a user's request isn't, oh shoot, I promised Maz will put in X, Y, Z this week and we didn't. How do you stop missing those bits of requests?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple areas there. So one is, you have to have really strong managers on your team, right? Because I can't do it all. And so I've got, strong manager over engineering, strong manager over our platform operations that does all that support, and then a strong director of product management. And so they have to be really strong so that you don't have to get involved into everything. But we use systems to help with that. So when I first started, there was a lot of, because again, we're a relationship company and we just want to help each other. There was a lot of, hey, can you do this in Teams, or hey, can you do this in an email? And so we really had to come down kind of hard, not in a mean way, but to say like, this is great, but this is our process and I need you to follow it. I can't do this. And so a couple ways that we did that was, if you don't feel comfortable telling someone, I can't do it this way, you've got to go submit a ticket, just tell them, I've submitted this ticket on your behalf. This is our process. And so we started out that way, a little bit of white glove service as much as possible. But for issues, we use Salesforce cases. So if you've got an issue, you go submit a Salesforce case. We've got proper routing set up. It goes to our platform operations team. They'll take a look at it. They will look at it and determine, is this a true issue? Is it something we already know how to resolve? Is it a bug? Does it need to go back to the engineering team and the product managers? Or is it actually an enhancement request that you tried to submit as a bug or a defect, but it's an enhancement request? We're going to kick it over to our enhancement request process, which is also Salesforce cases.
Okay.
For the large roadmap, we take that and we break that up into epics and then user stories, and that's all managed through Jira. So anything that we do that touches production and a change in production has to have a Jira user story. And then anything that is, hey, this user needs this permission set assigned, or we need to onboard a new user, all that has to be a CTX case, or sorry, we call it, instead of Salesforce, we call it CTX, client team experience. It has to be a Salesforce case. And so that has really helped us.
And then on the topic of education, the question I've got for you is, what is the Christen Sisler's way of measuring continuous improvement?
Well, I love data. So I do like to be able to see, the actual data, not just somebody saying something is better. And so I would say being able to look at that data to me is how you would measure the success. Are we driving user adoption? Are we able to, deliver more story points? So is our velocity going up? So that is to me how you would actually measure it. But I would say I get kind of more happiness out of just seeing end users and my team like not having the frustrations, or the team feeling like, okay, I don't feel burned out. I feel like I am doing a good job. I am finding happiness in the work that we're doing. I'm excited about what I'm doing. I'm learning stuff. So I definitely think that you have to have the data-driven success, but I do like to see, to me, you'll see the results also around you.
Okay, awesome. You think you can give us like a specific story that kind of embodies this, outside of the one you gave with the metrics, let's say?
That embodies just,
let's say negotiating with users, or with the council, picking a feature and then taking it through, and some of the challenges you kind of may have faced.
Trying to think of a good one. I don't think that there's any, to me, I don't see it, even looking out throughout my career, there's not like these big moments, right? I think it's just the small moments that add up. I will also say, and I tell my team this all the time, that I have a really hard time. It doesn't come natural to me to take a moment and celebrate success. I'm always thinking, we have so much farther to go. Look at all the stuff we have to do, instead of taking a look back and seeing how far we've come. So to me, it's like incremental. It's never this really big thing, unless I do take a look back and see, where did we come from and where are we today? We did launch a very successful feature with one of our business users. So it's our compliance checklist. We had the VP of compliance, and she was able to give just a really clear vision of what she wanted the user experience to look like, what she was trying to do. And we had challenges along the way, right? Just like you do in every project. And I would say that because of the relationship that we had, she was really good about talking through like, this isn't going to work. What are other options? And we would talk through pros and cons where I can do this thing or I can do this thing, but these are the areas you're going to have to give on either how we're going to be able to quickly change it in the future. It's going to be very difficult. So you can't change your mind a bunch in the future on these things, but maybe it's going to be a better client experience, or you have to give on the client experience a little bit, and I can change, more rapidly if you need that in the future. And so I would say, again, it comes back to building those relationships, and then you get that trust. And so that was one area where I saw, if I look back over the last couple of years, that was a product that I felt was very successful because of her vision, her willingness to really work with us on, just wasn't black and white, like, no, it has to be this. It's always, okay, well, what are my options and what can you do? Let's talk through this. And so being very collaborative. And, to this day, I think even this, not only that, but even working with her, like last month, she was having a problem, and instead of just, blowing it up or escalating, she like came to me and said, hey, I need to talk to you about this. Like, this is my perception. This is what's going on. And so we just really talked through like, how are the teams going to work together? Where's the breakdown happening? And so really always coming from a place of not thinking the worst, or like, they're being difficult or they're not trying to help us, but really coming from a place of everybody's just trying to really do a good job. Priorities don't always match up. And so really understanding where the other person or the other team is coming from, and then how can you work together?
Yeah, that's it's actually a really, really important point. It seems obvious, understanding the other side. But it happens a lot where people just completely misunderstand, what's going on the other side, or how decisions are made. Even just something simple as understanding the decision-making process often helps a lot. I once had a incident where we were a global company and the client was in Europe, but the decisions were being made here in the US. And he took that as the US's priority over the European business. Um, and in a lot of ways, it was the complete opposite because he was very demanding, and the US team was more laid back. But he had no clue, and he kept thinking that he was being shortchanged when it was probably the complete opposite. Yeah, so great point there. I wanted to ask you this before, but kind of switch subjects, but I'll pivot back to it. This is about managing the council. I know you have, and I know this is a complicated subject. So I know you have the members of the council are running different departments, different divisions. Um, so it sounds like they have their own budgets or allocations prior, or are you negotiating that within the council about what features or what's on the annual goals for this year? Like, this is going to be a service year, or this is going to be, let's say, a big sales year in terms of tech that you're going to build. And how do you get them, to kind of agree, or do you not have to make them agree? Right. One of the nice things about working with underlings, and I say this somewhat tongue in cheek by nice, is you can pull rank. Right here, you can't. You kind of have to, either get them to agree, or get I don't know, the CIO or someone else, to just kind of make a final decision. And often there's the tendency that, well, sales is just going to be service because, well, that's sales and that's a revenue driver. Um, so yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Or yeah, how did that go?
Yeah, so we determine that prior. So when we're doing our roadmap planning, when I say we're saving capacity, it's capacity per roadmap.
Mhm.
So we take all of our capacity at the beginning of the year and kind of assign it out based off of the roadmap. So sales is going to get, this number of developers. This road service is going to get this number of developers, all the way through. And then, our product managers, depending on the size of the team and the size of the roadmap, they may manage one or multiple roadmaps. So their job, if they're managing multiple roadmaps, is probably a little bit more difficult than the capacity planning at the engineering level. And obviously none of this is that black and white. I do want to call that out, because if my team listens to this, they're probably be like, wait, I'm in the service squad and I know I had to work on this sales ticket the other day. So it's not black and white, but you go in with a plan and then you have to adapt to just get things done. But we try to decide that at the beginning. So I think a really great thing is we were, reviewing the roadmap with the executives and the CEO this year, and we decided we wanted to add like a secondary roadmap. And I said, all right, where's the capacity coming from? I'm already showing you where that capacity is. So which of these roadmaps do you want to take one or two developers off of and move it to that other one? So that helps at the beginning, right? To say, well, this is your capacity for your roadmap. So what are your decisions that you want to make? Which is why, because we've got the largest amount of users in that service, most of the people on our council are service members, because they're going to have the most director, senior director, VP level. And that's, again, why we want the S1 CEO and the chief client officer in there, because that's really their teams. And so we go into that already understanding this is your capacity for your roadmap, for your teams, or for your business unit. And so then within that, that's where it becomes really collaborative. And I would say that Sequoia is one of the most collaborative companies I've ever worked at. So there is not that kind of tension, or we don't even really talk about the budgets. It's just, here's what it is. Let's all explain what value this is going to add, where we're not going to be able to meet a commitment, and then we can push that up, right? And so having that's fine. I guess I can do it this way for now. It's not ideal, but I can give because I see that this other team has a greater need. So I would say that that's something that's very unique at Sequoia, which is it feels like one team. It doesn't feel like, well, this is my business unit and I have to be successful. Really, the mandate is always, how are we coming through for each other and for our clients? And that's the goal. The goal is not, is your team going to meet their goals? Is Sequoia going to meet their goals? And how do we come together to make sure that happens? So with that mindset in place, it makes it a lot easier. I was at a company where, they had so many billable hours they had to hit. They wouldn't even join one of my meetings unless I gave them a code to bill to join that meeting. And so that cross-functional, trying to get that cross-functional collaboration going was very difficult. Where here it is, everybody coming together. They're willing to make concessions if it's going to make, the company successful overall.
In terms of insight and lessons learned for others, there's two areas that I'd like an answer on if we can. One would be advice to other CRM leaders that are looking to take some of the ideas around establishing a council, building a council. And then the second question would be advice to other CRM leaders that 2.5 years ago, doing exactly what you were doing and inheriting a serious, legacy Salesforce org with a lot of custom code, because that issue isn't unique and it's not an issue that, isn't going to continue to happen for the next several years, right? So 2 bits of advice on those 2 areas, please, Christen.
Yeah, so I would say first, for creating a council, it's going to look different depending where you're at. You have to look at your unique company. You have to look at the culture of that company. I talked to a really good friend of mine and mentor who has done a council before this, Jen, and kind of talked to her, how did you run your council? Talk me through some of that, and taking the things that I felt like would work at Sequoia, and then the things that I felt like wouldn't work here. So really, the idea of just how do we come together and agree on priorities is the ultimate goal. But how you're going to do that, there's not going to be a playbook that tells you exactly how to do that, because every company is different. Every team is different. The culture is different. So at hers, they really did have a point system. We're going to go around, we're going to vote, whatever feature gets the most points, that's what we're going to do. That's not going to work where I'm at. We're just a lot more collaborative. We're trying to come together. We're a smaller company, so we can do that too. We're not, 100,000 people. And so I think you have to look at what are you trying to accomplish? And that's the most important part. And then building a plan on how you're going to accomplish that, which is really around how do we prioritize? And then not only how do we prioritize, but how do we get the leaders that aren't maybe at the executive level, but are closer to our user base? How do we get them to understand why we're making these decisions? Because, Naz, when you were talking about that one example of, somebody felt like they were getting left out, you don't want that, because you want them to understand, we do care about what you're saying. We do care about your needs. Your needs aren't less than anybody else's. This is the reason why we're making this decision. You can't do that for all 1,000 users, right? You can't go to every 1,000 user and tell them exactly why. But what you can do is help educate at that next level, so that everybody is on the same page, because then you're going to have a lot better collaboration. And there's a lot more trust when things don't go right, because that's when you really need those relationships, is when something has gone wrong. And the thing that always will start is the finger pointing. And so I'm really big on, I don't care what happened. That in the middle of a crisis, I do not care what happened. I want to know, how are we going to fix this? Once everything is completely resolved, then we're going to take a step back and we're going to say, how did we get there? But in that moment, I don't want to know who is to blame, what happened here. I mean, obviously we need the root cause if we're going to fix something, but that's not the moment. Emotions are usually high. People are frustrated. Let's just resolve the issue. Then when things have calmed down and we understand the true impact of what just happened, if the true impact is still really high, emotions are still gonna be high, but sometimes you walk away and you're like, oh, that in the moment, it felt like that was a really big issue. The impact was actually really small. And so it's not that big a deal, but let's talk through how we make it better. And so that's when you need those relationships to be able to say, for you to work together without being like finger pointing in the middle of a crisis, but to all come together and just say, like, we're just going to try and fix this. What can I do? What can you do? Not, this is my responsibility, this is your responsibility. Because that's another thing, when you're trying to work across teams and you're trying to work with IT plus the business plus maybe a data team, and you don't own all pieces of it, you're going to need to, again, figure out how you're going to come together and say, I'm more than happy to do this. It's probably not my responsibility, but we can do this, so that we can work together. And so that is, that's going to end up being your goal.
And what about the legacy Salesforce?
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah. So I think that my advice would be, again, don't come in and immediately say, these are all the problems, this is how I'm going to fix it. There's always a reason stuff happened, right? And you don't have the history of that. You don't have the history of why something was built a certain way. You don't have the history of the last 10 years. And so when you do that, people can get really defensive. They can shut down to your ideas. So the first thing is really, getting in, I would say as a leader, especially when you've got to be, depending on the size of your team, you might have to be not at a detail level, right? At a very macro level. But when you first come in as a leader, the more you can sit with the individual contributors, really understand, like, what are you doing? What are your processes? Explain to me. And you take that first, however long you can, maybe it's a couple weeks, maybe it's a month, maybe it's a couple months, to really learn and understand, what are their challenges? Well, why did this happen? What is your perception of, how we got to where we're at? What do you think the big challenges are? And then you can take all of that and really start to piece together those trends of, well, I only heard this maybe like once. I don't think it was from a newer person, so I'm not really sure how much, it's their kind of point of view. Or, hey, I'm hearing this from every single team member. I'm hearing this from the business side. This is a true trend. This is a true challenge. and then start to put together your plan based off of that, because you aren't going to be able to understand everything right away, and things that you think even 2.5 years in, things that I thought I knew, I'm like, oh wait, okay, now I'm understanding this a little bit better, and this unique challenge better. So being open to just hearing what everyone has to say, seeking to learn and understand when you first come in, and then starting to build your plan, and then really understanding, again, the culture of, do I need to put this big plan out there? Is this the type of company that wants to see a 2-year plan and then we're going to execute on it? Or is this the type of company that, you've got to show results really quickly because of the pace that they're moving? And so how do you just show that incremental progress? And hey, here's what we want to do. I can get this done in a couple months, and here's the impact that I think it's going to have. And then you're successful at that, and you say, all right, here's the next thing I want to do. And so I think it's always about understanding really the people and the culture, because that's going to constantly change, and understanding the best way to be successful, that's not going to look the same from company to company or from team to team. And so something you did at the last company, you can't just come in and do the exact same thing. You're going to have to take some of the things that worked there, and you're going to have to leave some of those other things behind and figure out a new way. So I think that's what I like about it, is I love to constantly learn. I love to constantly be challenged and try new things. And so, that's just part of it.
Awesome. We're running a bit late on time, so we do need to wrap up. But we usually like to end with just your opinion on where the industry is going, maybe your industry, maybe Salesforce as a whole, any particular innovations within the Salesforce ecosystem that you're looking forward to or think is going to have a big impact.
Yeah. So I was actually kind of thinking about this morning. I think that, from an engineering perspective, I think that has changed a lot, right? When you first started out with Salesforce, there was a lot you had to do with development and code. Salesforce is making it easier and easier to do some of that without having to be a developer. So I think there's a couple of things. I think on the more admin side, you need to become more technical. On the product manager side, you need to become more technical, because you really need to understand if a user asks for this, how difficult is it going to be? So I can set the expectation up front versus, oh, that sounds really nice. Going back to my dev team, they suddenly are like, it's going to take us a month, right? So if you're a product manager or you're a business analyst that's working with the business, the more technical you can be, or at least understanding some of that, you can set those expectations up front. You can ask clarifying questions that's going to help your development team be more successful. Is this a hard requirement? What if we did, would you be open to kind of slightly changing these 3 things? Then you have an understanding of, okay, I bet we can do that more out of the box. And then on the developer side, understanding out of the box, I think, is really important, and some of the configuration, looking more towards the AI and really getting knowledge there, because I think just building straight code is not where we're going to eventually go. There's going to be AI that's going to help you write things. So more people that are not maybe as strong developers are going to be able to do some of that, understanding integration. So I think it's really starting to get into the pieces right now that are going to be less likely to be out of the box, that are going to be very difficult to get away from the more technical in the code, obviously moving into architecture. So I think it's really looking at your career path and where you want to go, and then making sure that you're in a good place there. And so that's what I always kind of care about, is like, how can I help people with their careers? How can I get them the right skill sets, get them the experience that they need? And so when I'm looking at where the industry is headed for Salesforce, that's kind of my mindset that I'm thinking. It's not this big, where can a company go with it? I do think that the AI is going to catch up really quickly, and we're going to go that way like much more quickly than I think. I don't think it's quite there yet for some of the use cases that I need, but I think as an individual, just looking towards where you want to keep your skill sets for your career.
Fantastic. So with that, Christen, we want to extend a thank you to you for sharing your story with us today. I personally found, I'm sure our listeners found, and will find that your philosophy and ideas around Salesforce Council, establishing one, how to go about that in particular, was very interesting and inspiring. So thank you again for your time.
Yes, thank you, Christen.
Yeah, thank you.
For our listeners, please do not forget to subscribe to the CRM Success Show for more episodes featuring amazing leaders like Christen, who are really well and truly shaping the existing, the present, but also the future of Salesforce CRM. You can also follow us on LinkedIn for latest updates and exclusive content.